You're listening to Rigging Up Key Performance Indicators. My name is Lucy, known online by LLBlumire, and today I'm joined by a number of my friends from my local testing group. We're going to be looking through all of the cards that have come out in the lead up to preview season, as apparently preview season hasn't started yet. NSG could have fooled me, and we're going to get their opinions and first impressions. Because I'm within NSG on the startup team, I've seen all these cards for a lot longer, so I'll be refraining from giving my own opinions, but hopefully they can all provide some insight.
Hi, I'm Jade. I've played Netrunner for about a year. I still don't know how Standard works. I'm purely a startup player pretty much, and I almost exclusively play red decks. I developed a thing called Kessleroid, which most of us probably have the cards open on.
I'm Luke. I'm commonly known as Lander online. I'm the madman who continues bringing MP to tournaments and sometimes winning with it. And I also started playing Netrunner around a year ago.
Yeah, I'm Valentin. I am known as Tomathor online. I don't actually play this card game. Lucy just has me on here so she can clickbait in the title with can someone who doesn't play the card game predict new card quality? So yeah, that's what I'm here for.
I think it's a crime not to mention you've seen this card game and you've said fuck off the second you saw PE happening, which is very valid.
So the first card that came out, and that I've named this stupid podcast after, Key Performance Indicators. This was released by Soccer during Worlds last year to show the world a first look at what Elevation might look like. It is a Wayland operation transaction. It costs 1 to play, and it costs 2 influence. Resolve 2 of the following in any order. First mode, draw a card, shuffle a card from HQ into R&D. Second mode, install a piece of ice from HQ ignoring all costs. Third mode, place 1 advancement counter on an installed card you can advance. And final mode, gain 2 credits.
So I am a known BTL player. I like putting counters on things. What it immediately spots to me is that if you pick the last 2 modes, you're essentially getting a charge of BTL for trading in a card. That doesn't seem great to me, just as a face value. That's just... But obviously this card is very flexible. The second mode, you need at least 2 ice on the table for it to be better than the last mode. Although I guess it saves you to click to install the ice. So seems like a very flexible card. I don't know if it will be good enough to warrant the flexibility of the card.
So I think the first line of text on the card, you don't want to be using that line of text. The best use of that is almost always going to be burying agendas in flooding, or like if you're doing extreme glacier deck thing, which it means that it doesn't properly compete with Spin Doctor, but it's a nice alternative if you don't want to spend the influence on Spin Doctor for whatever reason. Any combination of options is never going to feel, wow, that card did so much. But it's never going to feel like, oh, I literally can't play it because it does nothing.
I think it's good to establish that Wayland are kind of supposed to be the recursion faction more than NBN. I'm aware Spin Doctor will forever skew this horrifically, but I feel like between this and Descent and is it Basalt also has recursion stuff on it, of just like the amount of moving things between zones is a very Wayland thing to establish. And
different corp factions do it in different ways. Like
they do it in different ways, but I think it's good to give them options on how.
Having in-house options, especially in a core set, means that there's less of a mandatory requirement to import Spin. Spin is probably still the best of the options because the instant speed shuffle and all of that good stuff.
Yes, absolutely. But I think the other thing to think about this card is if you take that bottom option, it is always a better click for a credit option.
Yes. Again, as Vali said earlier, BTL on a stick is pretty good. Being able to do extreme glacier things, if you're making a single huge remote, being able to save the 2 or 3 credits on an outermost ice, that's essentially like combining that with the credit gain. This becomes like a save a click, install a card, gain like 4 credits. That's really good.
It occurs to me that this card can be tempo positive if you pick the second and third mode, because both of those actions usually hard require a click most of the time otherwise.
Yes.
It's definitely a tempo positive card, but I think it's probably the least core set feeling card we're going to get this core set, because it's a world champion card rather than something designed because it needs to be here as the core set.
The shuffle effect is a nice thing to have in the core set. It's not like outlandish. It's probably a slightly on the more complicated side for Elevation, in my guess.
Just to prompt a little bit of evaluation from you all in the context of identities. Of the identities that will be legal, this has 2 kind of obvious interaction homes. Mm-hmm. One of them being Nuvang, through virtue of it being an operation. And the other one, terrifyingly to my mind, being Earth Station, from the phrase ignoring all costs.
Yep, you just ice up that one remote and put it to the moon. Yeah.
Earth Station is a card
Like, I don't think BTL hates this either.
The problem with it as a BTL card is if you're targeting something you've not already advanced, you're essentially losing out on a BTL.
Well, yeah, you just don't do that.
For
Advancing
like
a BTL...
counter 2 or 3 on Pharos is pretty good.
Yeah. BTL is kind of sad when you're because like tree line means you instantly get triple advancements on stuff. This means that you can place an advancement on a card you've already advanced of 1 or 2 advancements on to get it to that magical 3 number. Which, so if you don't aim to take advantage of that second mode, I don't think you're going to be running this card very much, because that is definitely the highest potential ceiling of value on the card.
Just before we move on, I will add that my cool shot is that there is probably a operations ID in the new set as well as a core mechanic thing, because it's a very simple Wayland.
Confident on that?
I think it's probably the more bold shot compared to my other thoughts of the ID, which we'll get to later. But
yeah, like Nube likes this as well because it's a cheap playable operation that they like, and obviously Earth Station likes the potential to the moon remote.
I think that's key performance indicators litigated enough. So let's move on to the second card that came out in the Gamma reveals, where we got a series of 4 cards that were being included in the new first play tutorial experience. The first of these cards in the article is Anthill Excavation Contract. Anthill Excavation Contract is a 3-to-res Wayland asset with the industrial subtype. It costs 1 to trash, and it costs 2 influence. When you res this asset, load 8 credits onto it. When it is empty, trash it. When your turn begins, take 4 credits from this asset and draw a card.
Your fairly standard affair, like kind of economy card, nets you 5 credits over the run of 4 turns.
2 turns.
Yeah, 2 turns. 4 credits a turn, so even just getting it once, you're already netting a credit, which essentially means you clicked for a credit. So that's already like a pretty good floor on the card. That being said, the trash cost is only 1, so this can absolutely get sniped before you get any value out of it. With economy cards like this, it's always depends a lot on what other options you have, right? These are usually very equivalently comparable.
So it does also draw a card.
That is true. It does also draw a card. So it's kind of, well, that's kind of what I'm saying, right? It depends on if you can, like, would you rather have a card that nets you 7 but doesn't draw the extra card, or doesn't draw you the 2 extra cards or whatever, right? There's a lot of equivalence going on here. I think this is a playable card. If it is going to find its way into decks depends a lot on what the deck exactly wants to achieve and what the other options are in.
Yeah, so I think the obvious port of call for discussing Anthill is Rashida, which is a card that's rotating.
This is how we know Vali hasn't played much of standard, because he did not mention this card.
There's definitely a level of, if Vali knew, Vali would mention it. The value for a single turn is a lot lower than you get off Rashida, but that's also because Rashida makes the game far too fast.
This card is worse than Rashida in every way, but Rashida was so cracked that a worse Rashida is probably still playable.
It's not, I don't think, strictly worse, because turn 1 is gain 1, draw 1, and turn 2 is...
It's a net 5 draw 2, which is technically more raw value than Rashida, but the extra conditions attached to it probably makes it a little bit less good, but I still think the card's still really good.
It seems to me the worst thing about this compared to Rashida is that it is colored.
Yes,
you can't just slap it in any deck.
The 2 influence cost is a very interesting caveat for every non-Wayland faction.
Non-Wayland, I don't think this gets exported that frequently.
I don't think you export this, unlike Rashida, because I think it's a little more marginal as a card, because someone's going to trash it if they see it. It's 1 credit. It'll be interesting to see if any of the other factions end up with a Rashida equivalent or not.
Jinteki currently has Charlotte Castledor, which does the similar thing where you like slam it in the remote and it prints you money and cards.
Yeah, I mean, true. There's also a level of, there will probably be a campaign for HB, and HB loves campaigns and has millions of them, so I'm unconcerned.
Yeah, my hard read is that there's going to be campaign things in HB, but I'll talk more about that later. I think this has been mentioned previously and elsewhere, but the play patterns that this card creates is very interesting, because the big payout for this card is on the second turn when you get that 4 credit and a card draw. So obviously the turn you res it, you get a net 1 credit and a card draw, which is obviously good. Like, that's still good, but it also, more importantly, it will then pay out more if the runner doesn't interact with this in some way, either via directly contesting the remote that you've put this in, or having like a pinhole or some other way of trashing it. It's a known thing which the runner has to decide, am I going to try and contest that to deny the core 4 credits and a card?
Do people have any thoughts on the res cost being 3 to Rashida's 0?
That is very big, because it makes this much harder to slam down turn 1 and actually get value out of it. Because it means that you can't ice Essential, ice a remote, throw this in the remote, and then have it, and then be able to res it easily. with like an actual chunky ice. Because like with Rashida, you can install like a 4 or 5 cost like end the run ice, have a Rashida behind it, and then you defend the Rashida, and then you just get kicked out and you bounce back economy instantly. Whereas the bounce back potential on this card is way lower because it's only net 1 the turn you res it.
I think my add on this would also be that one of the most impactful 1 cost ice is Ice Wall, which is rotating as well. So that leaves obviously there's the barrier to code gate end the run in this set and Descent, but it does mean that if you're resing something to protect this, assuming the runner runs it, you're going to have a bit of a harder time resing any other ice for the rest of the turn.
Well, talking about cheap Wayland ice, the next card that was revealed somewhat fills that slot, though with a little bit more premium on it than Ice Wall. Kessleroid is a 2 to res, 1 strength, Wayland ice barrier for 1 influence. The runner cannot trash this ice while it is resed. First subroutine, end the run. Second subroutine, end the run. We'll take first impressions from our resident non-netrunner player.
So if this is supposed to replace Ice Wall, I'm very sad because I can't put things on it and gain credits while doing it. So that's an immediate minus. I do like the words "end the run." They seem pretty important to me. This has it on it twice, which I don't think really matters on a barrier because Cleaver is a card that exists.
Well, there's an asterisk there.
We'll get to it. Don't worry.
Yeah, Lucy can't comment.
And then there's words on it that are very matchup specific. So I mean, it is cheap gear check ice. If you want that, it's pretty good at that. I don't know how often you want your cheap gear check ice to tech against trashing ice. I don't know if that's a thing that is relevant.
There's the answer to your question of the cannot trash is that a lot of Anarch decks run a reasonable amount of trash cards nowadays. So that's a good line.
The current main thing is Aerosaurus Crew.
Yes.
Which is a very strong card.
And your note on the cleaver is very amusing because one of the things we're about to get to in about 2 cards Valley is a Fractor. Why could they possibly be reprinting a Fractor in the core set when there's already a Fractor called Cleaver? And everyone just assumes it's because they're going to ban Cleaver.
I think the discussion I've seen a lot of is, in a world where Crew exists, the runner cannot trash this ice on Kessleroid is not relevant if you're breaking it for 1 with Cleaver. It becomes a lot more relevant in a world where it costs you 2 credits to go through every time.
In a non-Cleaver world, I think 2 credits to res an ice that probably costs 2 credits to break is very reasonable. Yeah,
We'll talk about the Cleaver ban. I mean, we could talk about it now. Kessleroid has been pretty much everyone's evidence point number 1 for banning Cleaver.
I mean, evidence point number 2 is Rising Tide.
Let's skip ahead of Syailendra then, and we'll double back on Syailendra, and we can talk about Rising Tide first. Rising Tide is a 1 cost, 1 MU program Icebreaker Fractor. It costs 2 Anarch influence and has 1 strength. This program gets +1 strength for each Fractor in your heap. Interface 1 credit, break 1 barrier subroutine, and then it has 1 credit for 1 strength.
I think this card it's fine. It's definitely hard to judge because in my brain it's such a step down from having Cleaver that I don't know why I'd ever want it, and that's exactly why I think Cleaver gets banned.
I mean, I guess the point of comparison to talk about is the other core set Fractor.
Yes.
Because you really need to take this into the context of, like, it exists alongside Marjana.
Oh, against Marjana, it's not really a contest, right?
Marjana is bad, is the thing. It has the word break a barrier subroutine on it, but it's not good.
Yes.
And against Marjana, this is actually very good because it's extremely expensive.
It's a very generically okay level of, assuming you've dumped 1 Fractor, it is just Corroder, and Corroder is fine. It's just not amazing, you know?
This card seems terrible, I will say. I want to say the first line on this card is bait, because you don't want to play Icebreakers in your deck. They're not good cards. You have to play them because you have to play them. So having more Icebreakers in your deck just to get more strength on this seems bad. And then the words after it are like, fine.
Does it change your opinion if you know that Anarch has a pretty prominent mulch archetype that isn't going anywhere with rotation?
Again, like, do you really want to put bad cards in your deck just to mill them? Right? And that's like especially if your plan is to have Rising Tide as your main Fractor, like you can play 3 copies of this?
Yes.
And then and then like, do you go to more fractors just to get more value out of the line? I really don't think so. Maybe like I can see it being at 3 in the kind of churny decks that Anarch has, and you just incidentally get a bit of value out of that first line. But I don't think the first line of this card should be like the thing you put this in your deck for. It'll just incidentally be like at 2 power sometimes.
The obviously power up saves a credit, but there's not that many strength 2 and strength 3 barriers. There's, I don't think, search by myself, like there'd be Aket and Palisade at strength 2, and strength 3 is Hafren, Capacitor, Maskarovka, and Klevetnik.
Which is a card I've no doubt has never hit the table because Cleaver exists.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a level of you probably have to go compare the barrier to having gain 2 end a run for 1 more credit.
Like, it's essentially every factor in the bin saves you a credit whenever you run into a barrier, which like that adds up over time.
And you're planning to break the barrier fairly, which
like you don't always want to.
It's I feel like is mostly not the game plan generally. Unless
I think it might become more of the game plan. I think rotation helps it be a game plan, but it's like as of current my limited knowledge of current standard, it's a joke that people don't break ice.
Yeah, Devil Charm Crew, Criminals, all of their bypass tools. They just puts Turbine on the table, and then Turbine Cleaver Buzzsaw on it. They break ice for pennies. That's like they do like Arasana kickflips to get in. It's a bit of a meme. My view on this card, like there's basically like 3 main situations where I see this card being like solid. Like in the Anarch mulch decks like this because it's an infaction factor, which assuming Cleaver gets banned, because if Cleaver does not get banned, this sees 0 play. But assuming Cleaver gets banned, then this becomes a solid card for mulch decks because it becomes a 1 cost to install 3 strength factor with like the basic break 1 +1 strength. Which means that you're breaking most ice for like a small handful of credits. You're breaking brands for like 6, which obviously isn't as good as Turbine Cleaver, but like if Turbine doesn't get banned or touched at all, then this does become a 5 strength factor. It's the same as Cleaver, which obviously isn't as good because the subroutine break is less efficient.
I think calling this a 3 strength on baseline is overly optimistic.
Oh, not for baseline, but for like later game situations, because
even in late game,
Anarchs get through their decks really quickly, Vali, and they can mulch through their decks. They run multiple copies of their programs.
Yeah,
and
not to run you through mulch, but the average mulch decks probably finished their deck in about turn 6, maybe turn 7 on a bad day.
Yeah, well, I think you have to do that for this to be reliable at 3 strength, right? Because
but it's still okay at lower strength. You just pay an extra credit each time, which isn't good, but it gets better over the course of the game, which is nice. The other 2 situations where I think that line of text matters is in I could see some shapers running multiple copies of the Fractor Propeller along with a 1 copy of this as their influence dip, as like their last copy. So they use the propellers for the early game and then they get a 4 strength Rising Tide in the end game. So I can see shapers influence dipping for this. And obviously, like core set, like the previously mentioned bad card Marjana, a criminal could run 3 copies of Marjana along with Rising Tide in the lower level, like core set only format. But I don't think that's going to be in standard. I don't think criminals import this.
Core set only getting a ban list would be kind of wild, not going to lie. But it could.
It could, but like...
Syailendra is 4 res cost, Wayland Ice, Code Gate AP, 5 strength, 3 influence. You can advance this ice. When the runner encounters this ice, if it has 3 or more hosted advancement counters, place 1 advancement counter on an installed card you can advance. Place 1 advancement counter on an installed card you can advance as the first subroutine. Second subroutine is the runner loses 2 credits. And then third subroutine is do 1 net damage.
Oh, it has my 5 favorite words on it. You can advance this ice. I'm already liking this. Surely this card must be good, right? Baseline, this is fairly expensive ice. It's not cheap. It's not like the super high end, but you want to get some value out of this when you res this. And the immediate thought that I look at this is all of these are very ignorable if push comes to shove. Like you can just walk through this if there's something behind it that you really want to get to. Like it has pretty high strength, so if you decided you do want to break it, it's probably going to cost you a little bit. That being said, I don't know if any of these are like, I feel like you need to get big value out of the placing an advancement counter on something here, which I'm not sure you can reliably engineer a board state where that is the case after you've spent 4 credits resing an ice that doesn't actually protect anything.
Yeah, this is 5 credits to fully break against the most common decoder setups in the game right now, including LLBlumire, which is a testament to how good the 5 strength 3 sub stat line is.
The caveat when thinking about this is that this replaces Horton pretty directly as the advanceable code gate thing that Wayland gets. But Horton importantly said the words end the run and therefore was real ice, as opposed to ice that I just look at in Mercury and go, oh yeah, you can have that, sure, whatever.
The main strength, this falls into a unique category of ice, which does see a lot of use at the moment, which is that it's ice which is chunky stat lines, bigger strength numbers and subroutine count, but in exchange for those subroutines being A, not end the runs, and B, normally less impactful in whatever the game plan of the ice that it is. 5 strength 3 subroutine is like a teeny, which costs 2 more than this, with a similarly ignorable subs. Like this card, it's the main purpose for this card is putting it on a server you don't want the runner to run repeatedly, as it punishes repeated run. Trying to break this every time is expensive.
And not breaking it also costs money, which I think in wake of measured response existing makes a lot more sense.
Yes, you put this on a central server. This doesn't go on a remote. Hey, you want to poke HQ for singles? Sure, but you're going to suffer every time you do it. And my Pharos and log jams and tree lines are all going to get bigger and bigger every time you do.
Do we want to talk about the comparison all the old heads were making to Mausolus?
Not having end of the run is continuing to be the big asterisk of this card.
If it went up to do 3 net damage, I'd play it in Jinteki. That's great, you know?
But this one gets significantly better once you have 3 advancement counters on it, where I feel like...
Yeah, where the reward for your 3 advancement counters here feels pretty mediocre for the effort that is.
It doesn't make itself much better, but the idea I see is that you combine this with... it makes your other advanceable ice bigger and more scary overall, and it makes it much easier to get your other ice up to high advancement counters, high strength totals.
What infinite advanceable ice is left in the format?
That's the thing. I don't know how much. There's logjam and tree line. I catch an arrow.
But in terms of ones that give plus strength, it's literally just going to be
logjam,
Pharos, Colossus if that still exists. Logjam.
Is Colossus infinite?
Yeah, it gets +1 strength for each hosted advancement count. I have it. Sorry, I did a quick catalog search of is advanceable legal Neo type ice.
So yeah, the only cards which scale infinitely with this is Logjam, Colossus, and Treeline, and everything else is capped at 3. Getting a Ket and Pharos to 3 is with Treep is still pretty good. This essentially says give the corp 2 value when you encounter it. Give the corp another 2 value. You lose 2 credits. Lose a card. So it is painful, and if the game goes, if the runner runs through this carelessly, repeatedly early on, or runs through it carelessly a couple of times early, this can advance itself. It can advance itself asterisk. There's one rules nightmare scenario which exists. You hush this, there's no other valid targets. There's a judge call. It's a nightmare.
This card was announced before templating was finished. And it's not unprecedented for cards to change between preview and release.
Ideally, they fix that nightmare situation, but it might. This card doesn't compare. Yes, you can compare it to Hortum and Mausolus, but I think it's more comparable to something like a Jinteki, a lot of Jinteki ice, where it's, yes, you can walk through it, but it'll hurt. It's just rather than directly taxing your cards like a lot of Jinteki ice does, it instead just makes all of the other Wayland ice bigger on average.
Yeah, not gonna lie, I forgot it could advance itself. That makes me like this card much more.
A counterpoint to that play pattern, I find, is if you put 3 advancement counters on this thing to then start putting more advancement counters on other things, you could have just put the 3 advancement counters you put on it on the things you actually want to advance. So I am not convinced by that line of text in particular.
Also, I just want to give the last small point of that art is lovely. It's of a UNESCO heritage site, in case anyone here isn't aware.
Yes, it continues the Wayland tradition.
The heritage site's not called Syailendra, though. That's the empire that built it, which is kind of neat.
We have finally escaped from the Gamma cards into the arguable start of the not preview season.
Legally not spoiler season yet.
With the release of a card fan, fully revealing the card IP enforcement, and partially revealing 6 other cards. We'll dive into IP enforcement more fully in a second. But I'm very curious to get everyone's like quick gut check vibe on what they think each of the partially revealed cards do. So we'll just do a really quick round table. Your wildest called shot, I'm just curious. So let's start with Shred. It is, what we know about it is that it is a 1-cost Anarch run event with the text, run any server, the first tip,
Yeah.
Any called shot at all, Vali?
Putting me on the spot here.
Anarch run event 1.
Anarch is the one deck I played, so that at least gives me an edge there. I feel like this might be some sort of what is the gift card called? Raindrop Cut Stone.
Yeah, like a value tempo econ run event.
Yeah, is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's a Raindrop Cut Stone, but like limited, so it's gonna be the first time.
Yeah, what do you think the first time is? Is it like subroutine resolve?
A subroutine resolves is my call shot here.
And then it's just like some kind of money payoff to encourage you to slam your face into things, or like card draw, or some other kind of tempo game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's.
Jade?
I'm pretty sure Michael's shot is some form of destruction. I think either it's shredding your hand or shredding the ice. My flavor win would be both, that you have to pay cards from your hand equal to strength, but that's a card pretty extreme, like guessing most of the card text of a card that we see almost nothing of.
What do you think the first time is?
I think it'd be the first time after you pass a piece of ice rather than the first time you encounter one.
The first time you pass a piece of ice this run.
Yes.
Which could be the RU we see as well, the run.
Yes.
All right. Okay, and then over to Lander.
My spicy prediction is based on some being around people in the testing group and hearing hushed whispers and like whatever. There's rumors of there being some counter to Anaretic Void Managum.
That's public. That's public. That's confirmed in the Neon Static interviews. There is some form of Skunk Void tech in the set.
My spicy take is that it's this card, because my proposed text is run any server. The first time a corp card effect would end the run, you may trash your grip to prevent all end the run effects for the rest of the run. That's my spicy prediction. Basically, it would I don't know if that may be too hard of a counter, but like it would mean it doesn't stop any other subroutines or effects from resolving. But it would be I get in, I shred my way into this server.
The next card in the set is Poétrï Luxury Brands, All the Rage, a new Syailendra identity that we know nothing else about. Speculate wildly.
Okay, okay. I'm all right. This is based on my knowledge that purple manipulates clicks. Here's my called shot. You do not have to take the mandatory first draw as corp. You get the extra click instead.
That's awful, Vali. Thanks, I hate it.
No, actually incorrect. That is horrific. 4-click corpse without needing to push the game forward. That is actually...
They just never take it. They never draw a card. And then what are you going to do?
Slap some downside on it, don't worry.
That's why we invite the non-netrunner player to this show.
Oh, that's it.
I just want to skip the suggestion.
Like if you want
the flavor of Poétrï is some vague fast fashion thing of like telling them that they get more, like do better from installing new assets or by like getting rid of old ones as opposed to just something. But I think this is the assets one specifically.
I think that I'm going to go even more specific. I think this is a campaign card in some way, because like Biawak has historically had a variety of campaigns, with like Nico campaign, Malin campaign, Refuge campaign, and I think this will synergize with specifically and with the subtype advertisements, specifically in some way, shape, or form. Like my specific called shot is where it allows you to pre-install them whenever an agenda is scored or stolen. More wide than that, I do think this is definitely something to do with campaigns.
So we've got advertisement typo. We've got a general theme of probably some kind of assets HB deck. Next up, Proprionegation. This is a 4/2 agenda for Jinteki. With the text, wet, count, host, to the, a pro, ability. And the a pro is hint text rather than rules text.
Yes, italicized.
Let's start with our non-netrunner player again.
It's a red agenda. It probably like kicks your dog, steals your lunch money, and then
if you
my heart wants this to read, if the corp scores this, they lose the game.
If you couldn't tell, Vali does not like Jinteki.
for what it actually does, like, I don't know, there's hosted advancement counters on it, probably shoots you in the face with them. That's because it's a red card. What else is it gonna do?
So
Right.
specifically, that word in italics is approaching, which means it's probably forcing you to encounter a piece of ice. The debate is in my head solely on what exactly it's doing about that.
Yes.
But this could be, so it's either going to just force you to encounter a piece of ice at some point that's not on a server or something, or it's changing, like adding subroutines to something maybe, or who knows.
My hot take is that it's Ag Infusion on a stick. It's Nisei Mark II, but instead of saying end the run, it says do Ag Infusion. Force them to run a different server. Because it means it also like the ability to use this ability only once per turn. Or like or only use this ability only during a run as well. Would also
I think I can give my card review without seeing its text, honestly. And that is that it's a cool card, I'm sure, but it has to beat Shitter, and it's not going to beat Shitter, so I don't
Well,
care.
the thing is, it doesn't necessarily have to directly beat Shitter, because Shitter is more just damage and tempo and whatever. Whereas if this fulfills more of the niche that Nisei Mark II fulfills, then this becomes a new, slightly alternative Nisei Mark II, which has historically been a very good card because you can chain them into each other very well. And having Ag Infusion on a stick, it basically does the same thing of get them off the server that you want them out of.
Yeah,
and having
this is probably the Nisei replacement. It'll be interesting to see whether the other agenda is a House of Knives replacement or not.
Chromatophores. 1 cost Shaper program, cost 1 MU.
that's it we know.
That's all we know about it. It's got a cool rainbow art. Any wild takes on this one about it giving the runner 17 clicks, Vali?
I mean, it's green, so they're allowed to do anything as long as it doesn't actually run, right? Which makes it difficult to
even get runs
put text
nowadays,
on.
so who knows?
Fair.
They
I mean,
had to
hold
ban
on.
a
We
card
can't
that said make them run.
we can't print
Yeah.
cards that encourage Shapers to run. They'll get too good at the game.
It's cheap, so it can't break very well, right? It's only 1 MU, 1 cost, so
Are you
Well, the
thinking
key thing is
Icebreaker
that-
rather than utility program then?
it gives Icebreaker to me, yeah. Frankly, I don't know why. It's just I think like most of the like animal utility things are cuter. that's my call shot here. This looks like it breaks some ice, you know.
We got any opinions from Jade?
I don't play green cards, so I don't know. I'm sure it does something.
All right. Lander, you got a cool shot
Okay.
for us?
So I'm very confident in it being one of two things. It's either some sort of AI breaker, changing the subtypes it can interact with, or like something along those lines, because of the whole color changing. Like the card is named after the way Octopus can change their thing, and the feature of the art is the color changing. My specific cool shot is that you choose either Barriers, Cogate, or Sentry at the start of your turn, and it can only interface with ice that have that subtype as an AI.
So you think
So
like a
that-
chameleon replacement?
Yeah, more of like a chameleon replacement, but a bit better because you don't have to reinstall it every turn, and maybe actual boost numbers. The other option is something more akin to Palangi, but Palangi exists. And Palangi is like a really elegantly designed card in my opinion, and I don't think they would necessarily want to print like a too similar a card.
It is
'Cause
worth
Palangi
noting that in terms of what's rotating out, is Egret is rotating out, which is a bad card
Yes.
nobody plays.
Yes.
Well, like Kit decks played it, but Kit isn't probably one of the IDs, so
It is also rotating, and I don't think
Yeah.
we're going to... If Kit's effect comes back, which like potentially, I don't think it'll come back in Elevation, and it won't be an ID.
Do you reckon a
But
resource?
Coming back as like a resource for like a future set could be interesting.
Maintenance access. We know it's a criminal event that is a double, and where you can see the end of a N in terms of subtype, which I think
I-
can only be run.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I think that's what everyone's assuming.
We can double check that. It's Crim 3 influence, and the text on it is null cost to spend click, which is just the double text.
Yeah, additional cost.
And then ch and HQ.
I mean, I would have guessed it's a run card without knowing that N can only be the run card because it's a blue operation. No, it's not operation. What are they called?
Event.
A sorcery. Yeah, I don't know. Probably accesses additional cards if I had to guess, because again, it's blue and it runs and it costs you a click instead of credits. So.
You're thinking maybe some kind of like souped up legwork replacement then?
Yeah, legwork was the one that accesses like 3 in hand, right? That's
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say spacing proves that must be run because it's a free character word ending in un. So unless you think it's like
Okay.
somehow a new word that they've
The
added as a subtype.
assuming it's not a new event subtype, there is condition, which it's not, current, which it's not, double job, mod, org crime, which it's not, priority, run, sabotage, stealth, and terminal. So yeah, assuming it's not a new subtype, it's got to be run.
Yes. Also, look at that guy. He's sneaking into
No,
the
it's
back.
the new fun subtype.
Oh,
Shut
God.
up. Look at the guy. He's getting into the back alley. Like this what's the old card of on the toilet? Like that was the old inside job, isn't it? Like funny card.
Oh,
Has that energy.
yeah, Boris, yeah.
Boris on the toilet. Yep.
Yeah. All right, Jade and Lander, what does this card do?
There's what I think it does, and then there's what I think I'd want it to be doing to actually play it. I think it probably, for 0 credits, just gets you into HQ via the back door, and that's about it. I'd like it to do more than that, probably let you access an additional card, but...
Via backdoor, do
I
you
don't
think
know.
just archives? Or do you think it just
think-
gets you into HQ?
I think that art screams just archives to me, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. I have things to say about this card because I have stared at maintenance of access trying to figure out what the giant essay, the 3 huge lines of text after the additional cost line, because like the text run archives, when you approach archives, change the attached server to HQ, aka a sneak door beta on a stick. That doesn't take a full 3 lines of text, so there's something else going on here. So my specific text, run archives, when you approach the server, you may change the attached server route to HQ. That's my thing. I think it's a sneak door beta on a stick, because that's rotating and it's a cool design space. There might be some other things on the card, but
that would change Sneak Door Beta's timing from success to approach.
Yes, I'm aware. Because of spacing reasons, I'm very confident in like the second line of text after the double additional cost line. It's run archives when something ouch, which is either when that CH, I'm convinced, is either breach or approach. And I decided to go with approach. It's definitely one of those two, but I think changing it to approach makes more sense rather than it being breach, because breach timing is like weird and after everything else. So when you approach archives, you may change. And I think there's a may because of spacing again.
Yeah,
Okay.
from a
might just be
gameplay
that.
perspective, replacing Sneak Door is really interesting because there is an argument that Sneak Door is okay as an event because generally the runner gets like 1, maybe 2 Sneak Doors off before
They just ice archives.
before it gets back to the corpse turn and they just ice archives. So
I also think it being a double event makes it more, because you're spending a substantial like cost to get into HQ via
yeah,
archives.
being a double would make it with no other upside would be a bit of a rough sell. But it is a core set card, so I could see
It's a core set card, and it is a guaranteed way. It's a near guaranteed way into HQ, which combos well with stuff like twinning, copulation. If it works the way I think it does, where it like properly replaces Sneak Door, then it works with Detenio and Deep Dive stuff, which like, hey, we love knife support.
It does also cost 4 credits less than Sneak Door.
Yes,
And
if
doesn't
you're
take
only
up
using
2
is
memory
important.
units.
Well, Sneak Door is basically, it doesn't take up 2 memory units, doesn't cost 4 credits, and Sneak Door's already a double because you have to install it and then click it.
Our next card. It's a Wayland Ice Sentry Destroyer. It has 6 strength, and it costs 14 to res. Before
Funny
we get on
number, go
to
brr.
anything else, Jade, do you want to talk about your fun number crunch theory?
Okay, so this sounded more like incoherent rambling before I could prove that 78 wasn't an I. Until like today, we technically didn't have it confirmed that 77 and 78 were both operations. But this must be a card number 74 because it has to be before Kessleroid and Syailendra, now that we've seen the cards in between. For KPI is 77, we have the new NLDB printing. So it has to be before KE, which is really fun because that art is a Komodo dragon, and if the name was in English, it would probably be Komodo, which would be after. Notably, if you're going for an Indonesian name for the card, then you'd be going for the translation of either Buaya Darat, which is land crocodile, or Biawak Raksasa, which is roughly an English giant monitor, but just another native name for it. Either way, I'm calling it's one of those two.
AKA big creature ice is named in its local language based on the set release, which
Yes, that is incredibly on brand for NSG naming.
Yes.
And it has to be before KE, which gives me a lot more credit, especially now that measured response has been revealed, and I'm not just mad person rambling that it has to be before that.
All right, we'll see if that bears true. Anyone want to take a guess at what's written on the card? Because it costs 14 and it's got some number of subs.
I mean, I better hope this does my taxes for me and like everything else as well. So just coming from like other card games, I would expect this ice to have some form of protection because it generally feels really bad if your big thing just gets like removed without doing the thing it's supposed to do. So I would reckon at least one line of text is devoted to some sort of protection, whatever makes sense here, like maybe like anti-AI or something, or just the cannot be trashed cost, the cannot be trashed line from the other ice we saw earlier. And then after that, it has end the run, which is good. It looks aggressive, so I assume it does some amount of meat damage. And that's about where I'm going to keep it.
That's the interesting debate, Vali, is I really think this card should have net or meat damage on it to be like
but it doesn't
worth
have
14
AP
credits to
on
me.
it,
But it's the subtype AP is usually done to indicate net damage or other damage on
like
an
if
ice.
you look
and
at
I don't think NSG have ever printed a non-AP murder ice.
Because if you go back and look at Syailendra, that has AP and it does net damage.
Okay.
It's like
I'm just now looking
I
at the
want this to
subtype.
say even if someone fully breaks it and gets past it, it bites them sometimes, like an equivalent of Finutria, but like just damage. And that's what I want as a Jinteki player for a 14 cost ice. But
it's also not particularly large for being 14. Like 6 is not that unbreakable.
No.
So I'm like,
so the card it's replacing is Archer, which was 4 and an agenda.
Yeah, and an agenda is worth about.
I guess the caveat is that no one installed Archer for its actual, like, no one rezzed Archer.
Because Eminent Domain is a card that exists, is the world we live in, and therefore you can score a 3-1 agenda and put this on the table for the grand old total of nothing, which makes it significantly better. And the fact that it's also in the core set has led to me, my spiciest hot take is that this just has 5 subroutines on it. It doesn't have any additional text. Because based on hard spacing, this other than the last subroutine, which has the word end on it, so it's probably an end the run, maybe with some extra thing, but probably just a hard end the run. There are 4 lines above this. Some of those subroutines are going to trash things on the table, maybe trash some hardware, trash ink unconditionally, trash programs. My bet is that there's probably a gain money subroutine on this just to make the 14 res cost slightly more manageable.
Nah, everyone's cheating on it. I refuse to believe that it has any money back.
So let's talk about the money back thing, because the 3 kind of schools of thought I've seen on this are either it has a sub that gives you back a load of money, so if you get it off on a face check or they can't break it, you refund a lot of that 14.
That's my fear. Is like one sub that says gain 3.
Yeah, it would still be expensive, but more reasonable. The next theory I've seen is Tithonium style text that lets you just avoid the cost entirely by forfeiting. And the final theory I've seen is that this is actually space ice and that somehow the Komodo dragon is in space, which is a type of ice that gets cheaper when you advance
is fun, but like I feel like space ice in core set would be wild. You know?
I don't for core set I don't think so. Like I would not be surprised if this has some additional effect as like a first line of text. I don't think it's a don't be trashed ice because I don't think they'd print 2 bits of ice which both have the text can't be trashed. I could see a can't be bypassed type of clause potentially as like a special fuck you to criminals, but I think like the destroyer subtype is already a giant fuck you to criminals anyway. I'm of the opinion that this just has 5 subroutines on it and it just says if you face check this, suffer.
I definitely am of the full school of thought of this has some like even if you succeed in passing it, there's a caveat. Would be my guess at what the bonus text is. Yes. Whether that's because you bypassed it or not.
That does mean it would only have at most 3 subroutines though, if the bonus text is quite short.
Yeah, my 3 subroutines there, Luke, are trash 1 installed, run a card, trash 1 installed, run a card, end the run. At which point I think that's kind of worth it because you can just pick any 2 of their cards.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I think a single. I think one of the subs is probably trashed and installed run a card as just an unconditional pick their best thing and put it in the heap.
I'm staring at it a bit more. I have an alternative called Shot. Mm-hmm. This is ice that gets cheaper for every program on the table, and then it shoots programs when. So it's like this costs 2 less to res for each program on the table.
That is completely out of left field, but I don't hate that.
That's actually pretty good. I like that, Valley.
Yeah, I like it. I don't think that's what it is, but it is a cool design idea.
Well, Fenutria is an easy example of like it does the punish for being over 5 cards. It could be something similar.
Also, we like
I
the
definitely
moth.
think
We like the
that's a
moth flavor
reasonable
text.
way of punishing the runner for being too big, you know?
We
My
like the
Shaper
moth
Heart
flavor
hates that.
That's-
Yeah, I think criminals and shapers. Criminals hate this because they don't run backup breakers, and shapers hate it because of that idea.
Yeah, our
So, like-
700 programs causing us to get punished for our hubris.
Yeah, purely Shaper hate sounds incredible. Don't
I
get me
think
wrong.
I think the more I look at this card, I think it has text on it that makes it cheaper. Actually, because 14 is actually an unreasonable amount of money to be paid for anything.
I think my
They did print a 10 cost ice last set with no reductions, Valley.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
There's
10 is significantly less unreasonable than 14. 14 is actually unreasonable.
again,
They could.
This is in the faction of eminent domain, the ability to put an ice on the table for free. Like, I am convinced that this
Again,
is
No one pays the cost is my first point, and second
Yes.
of all, there's a design school of thought from Magic the Gathering called Timmy cards, which is that Timmy likes seeing big numbers on the card. Let Timmy have this.
Yeah, but again, like big dinosaurs that get reduced in cost but are still big are very much still Timmy cards. And that sort of design plays well with the cheating cards onto the table because you still get value out of it, but not as much as if it actually costs 14.
the other thing.
Again, this makes me more certain that this has reduced costs on it, because if you can just cheat out something that costs 14, there is like no way you can design anything else that will ever get cheated out.
Also, Wayland have like more money than God,
Yeah, like,
so I'm
part of-
convinced that like
No, yeah. Part of Wayland's identity is being able to throw big sums of money around, and I think this.
No, I am aware, but again, 14 is a too unreasonably large sum of money.
But
is
hold on. It's also important to keep in mind that when they reveal the 13, 12, and 11 cost ice, we can finally ladder our way down into Cloud Eater.
Oh,
huge,
Yeah.
actually. Yes, that's an important feature.
Yes, obviously this is extremely critical.
It's time to move on to cards we know the text of with IP Enforcement. This is a NBN X cost operation Grey Ops, 5 to trash. It is a trashable operation. As an additional cost to play this operation, remove X tags. Install one agenda from the runner's score area with a printed agenda point value equal to X. If the runner is still tagged, place one advancement counter on that agenda. Now, for me, this is very much a card where reading the card doesn't explain the card. So I'm going to just give the intuitive numbers breakdown of what this does. This means that if your opponent has got 2 tags, you can steal and fast advance out a 3-1. If they have 3 tags, you can steal and fast advance out a 3-2. If you have a Hollow Man on the table, then you can do both of those for 1 cheaper. If you have a Hollow Man on the table and they have 4 tags, you can steal and fast advance out a 5-3, and also there's some Stoke the Embers maths that makes it work like a 3-2. So that's basically what the card does when you ignore the words on it.
So my favorite part of this card is that it costs 5 influence, because any other deck other than NBN clearly has the amount of tags throwing around to make this card useful.
I think, yeah,
We really needed to stop this being played in
the influence is less of a we think people are going to actually do it, and more like a we want this to be hard NBN flavor, and any other card deck shouldn't be trying to do this.
So the games I played, which admittedly are in lower power level, and there you quite regularly hit against tag decks, you hit a point where you're like, okay, I have 3 tags on me. At this point, the game will no longer go on long enough that it's worth it for me to clear this. I will simply eat the consequences. And in that scenario, this is devastating because it puts you further away from trying to close out that game through the tags. But beyond that, I don't know if this card is ever live in a real game. I don't know if it does enough for the amount of effort you need to put into it to get the tags onto people. Yeah, this seems tough to evaluate, I put it mildly.
Personally, I love this card on so many levels. So this is the Psychic Graphics replacement set, which is fun because I actually not only called the tag WinCon being in this set on my overall bingo predictions that Lucy's seen, but I also called the number right, which kind of hints towards that I think I get reasonably correct on my number crunching so far, which is good. The art, I love. There's the little behold eye in the bottom corner, the lawsuit with the words lawsuit around it. Excellent. No notes.
Very subtle.
Very subtle, really fun. I haven't quite worked out what the text on her screen says. Just fun art. And as much as Psychographics is one of my favorite cards, I think I can stomach losing it for a card that says that the runner is winning less.
I really like the idea behind this card because it's a interesting way of making tags matter more as like a granular amount, but not too much, where it's not like it has infinite payoff. It helps reinforce the idea, which NSG seem to be going for recently, where one tag is a problem, but probably won't be too bad. Won't lose you the game instantly by itself, but it's still not great for you. 2 tags is where you might actually just perish, and then 3 tags is where you're like, okay, now I'm in trouble. Like properly in trouble. You need to start dealing with this. Depending on depending on deck and archetypes and like figuring out whether or not they're running Wayland cards for end of the line. But
can I pause and ask the question of, am I correct in saying that this is the first NSG card with Trash 5 on excluding system update? I guess Trash 6 is super deep,
There's
right?
Trash 6 and Super Deep. But yeah, this is the first Trash 5.
Yeah, Super Deep technically has the word Trash 6 on it. It doesn't. Bad Pub exists, but like, yeah. This is the first. The runner can choose to deal with this by just running HQ and trashing it, but like they're spending a lot of money to do so. Which, like, that's what NBN does, makes the runner lose money. The fact that it removes the tags, like, yes, if the corp takes back the agenda, fast advances it, and equalizes the playing field, yes, the runner is now further away from winning, but you've also just saved them 2 clicks and 4 credits on oftentimes if you're using it to steal back a 2-point agenda, like a Stoke the Embers or a 3-2. Yeah, Tomathor headline's still in. Yeah, that's good. That's good. But the fact that this is expensive for the corp regardless. Even if they're like fast advancing using this, like they're spending 2 credits to get it back because they're having plus a Hollow Man thing. Like this is still expensive for the corp, which then means they're spending less money on actually defending the agendas to begin with, which leads to potential games where IP enforcement decks are probably you can probably get agendas more easily.
I think from a NSG design perspective, as someone who cares about card design, I think most end goal tag punishments should be removing tags, and I think that's mostly what they're moving towards.
Yes.
I'm aware that makes it incredibly, unless you've taken a shit ton of tags, they're probably not doing this and shipmenting it, you know. I do really like that this also lets them steal back the card if they can, you know, if Corp is too greedy and doesn't pick a thing they can fast advance.
Yeah, like they decide to steal back the card, put it in their big scoring amount, don't necessarily score at that turn, and then you get back in there to get it back anyway. The fact that this removes tags makes it a significantly less feels bad in my opinion. Like, yes, the Corp can still just straight up win the game off this card, but like it makes tags matter throughout the entire game, which so like tag me is a bit more risky late game.
Are you going tag me in a world without Hot Pursuit?
Well, not intentionally. Not intentionally tag me, but like after a certain amount of tag storm, you just say screw it, I'm not clearing them anymore. Is more what I was saying. Not necessarily putting cards in your deck to take tags.
When people fuck up and hit checkist, they generally don't respond with a "I'm clearing those 4 tags." They go,
yeah, no,
whatever, they're 4 tags now.
I'm tagged for the game now. And against NBN specifically, if you've got enough information that they're probably not on Mindscaping or end of the line, you can probably get away with that without dying. This is less likely to straight up end the game than double end of the line or Mindscaping kill. Floating tags against NBN is less instant game losing a lot of the time, especially with all of the really harsh 1 tag punishment cards rotating, like self-growth programmers rotating, so you no longer have to play reinstall simulator. That's the big one. And this caring about multiple tags is cool because it means that even if you can't clear all the tags, you can say, oh, I've just taken 2 tags, I'll clear 1 of them, and IP is now not played, shipment is now unplayable. I'm not in a good spot, and I might want to clear that tag later, but it's not like, oh, I just die because of murder cards. And like 1 tag is unlikely to get you killed.
I also haven't mentioned the words reality minus yet, which is one of those things that I know I personally am assuming is in the set.
And having a tags matter ID without the text gain 2 credits on both players' turns every turn makes it more actually having to build an economy, which means you can't just tag every time all of the time no matter what. Your pings are not free anymore. It means you have to actually put an economy in your Tag Storm NBN deck beyond just the ID potentially, which makes the expensive cost of IP enforcement and other similar stuff more of a meaningful thing.
For our next card, we have Top-Down Solutions. It is a 2-cost operation for Syailendra. It has 2 influence. It's an operation and it says draw 2 cards, install up to 2 cards from HQ, 1 at a time. And then it has an FFG amount of flavor text.
Well, they
also
have all
has-
the space. At least it has the space for the flavor text.
It also has the most adorable little guys on the art, and I love them, and I want a plushie of them. NSG, please make a plushie of them. Keiko who?
Well, you should get on that, Lucy. But
I balance
yeah.
startup. I don't have any say over merchandising.
To be fair,
Vali,
Kessleroid also had an FFG amount of flavor text on. We just didn't mention it.
That's true.
yeah, when you have less words on the card,
In
you can
fact,
actually get flavor text.
while looking at every card that's been printed so far, when they've had space, they've really gone at it on flavor text.
And I will say, the flavor text in this set is some of my favorite flavor text that NSG has ever written.
Drawing cards is good. Installing cards is good. Doing it for 2 costs is good. That's my analysis here. I think something relevant to point out, this only costs 2 influence. And I think there's a bunch of decks that would want this effect that are not purple. So I think this is a very interesting card that I could see going in a lot of decks.
Yeah, any sort of asset spam thing.
Not even just the assets, man. Just like installing cards for tempo is just good, right? Like
Yeah.
we were talking about the name escapes me, but the very first card we covered key performance indicators,
Yes.
where you essentially would allow you to install 2 cards. One of them, albeit for less cost, with the ice for no cost. But it also didn't draw you cards. So I think this card has potential for sure.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting caveat. They'd need to print a new asset spam ID for NBN because the only one they have is near Earth Hub and it's rotating.
Epiphany. Epiphany asset spam
Oh,
is a very real
yeah,
thing.
okay. Epiphany's here.
And Epiphany
could use this card.
and Epiph can do kickflips with Hollow Man, which IP also likes. Like,
Okay, yeah, I can see Epiphany running this. I just wanted to mention that I think there's probably slightly less NBN asset spam in this, specifically in this set. Also, on scary notes of number crunching, this would have taken the slot I guessed as biotic, and it scares me that I don't know if that means that unless there's some third operation in this set, I'm kind of worried for whether the biotic slot exists. On my, I called the number of 44 as an HB operation completely correctly. I just said it should be the biotic slot. And I don't know if there's another slot for an operation such that biotic is also here, and that scares me slightly.
Clearly, that is why it's on the identity instead. Just saying. Just saying.
No.
But this card, if you do think about it, is doing the sort of click compression stuff that is useful. It's just a different form of click compression.
it just doesn't allow you to fast advance is the key.
So
thing.
this
Not
plus
necessarily.
Bass Chiriboga is a fast advance tool.
With what?
Bass. The silly click game
Oh, that thing.
Mirror Morph
Oh,
card
yeah,
that
that-
nobody plays right now.
The biotic labor on a stick. Yeah,
Yeah.
that guy.
Yeah, add some ashes, and I don't play purple.
It's also
so I'm not gonna pretend I know what
fast.
that is.
It's also fast.
Oh,
advance.
yeah.
It's also fast advance of Hollow Man for all of your money.
Yeah, so you've got Hollow Man and Bass Chiriboga lets you turn top-down solutions into fast advance.
Well, a shit ton of money, but that's fine.
That's fast advance.
Yeah, it's
I'd
fast
still be
advance.
pretty sad to lose biotic labor. I don't know.
See, my immediate thing when I saw this card, so I occasionally do the thing, especially with like really straightforward quote unquote effects like this, of value number crunching, where you consider the cost of the card, the click you spent to play it, and the card itself, because like general like value value of
the
card,
maths where
right?
this is actually a blank piece of cardboard.
Yeah, the maths where this ends up as you paying 2 credits, which
You go click for credit, draw top-down solution, play top-down solution, and that's given you the exact same effect you would have gotten by just draw, install.
Yes, you're paying for value for 4 value. The caveat, obviously, the main thing is that clicks do not equal credits do not equal install most of the time. And for this card to be good, and for this card to be really strong, it's good at converting credit into tempo. So basically, you need to have credits. And you have to, always be wanting drawing cards, which Corps generally do want to do, but there are niche situations where you don't want to be drawing cards for whatever reason. Like you've got R&D log, you don't want to let it run more cards, or you're doing like a Glacier style thing. And the fact that it's bundled together with the double install, which the double install is the primary reason you run this card.
The double install enables you to do click compression things.
Yes, it's the most unique effect on the card, which is why you run this card, and the fact that it's bundled in with the draw makes it more of a complete package rather than just a combo piece, which I think is a better place for the card overall, but it is quite amusing that it is just net 0 value overall. The way for this card to be good, and I do think this is quite easy, is just have money, which, hey, look, that's the game of Netrunner. Have money most of the time.
If you want to make any fun, spicy takes while we're here, because I kind of have one, I think this triggers Poétrï. Like the 2 installs probably give you a Poétrï trigger. So
What do you think Poétrï is? What are you saying?
Either it's going to be when you install a new campaign to me, or it's going to be my flavor win would be over installing. If you just get rid of your old campaign, who cares? Look at us new shiny campaign. But like, I feel like this card, assuming Poétrï's assets, this card feels like it should be a tech piece for that, and I just don't. This makes me want to speculate on its truth.
I don't think this is a tech piece.
It's a good card anyway, but like,
I think this is, as our mutual friend is a big fan of HB Go Brewer, like this is a turn money into tempo card, and it's very good at that because it allows you to put cards from your deck onto the field, and that is very good for asset spam. And even if it doesn't directly synergize with the ID like directly, like there's no like direct synergy. Like I think the style of deck, the ID we've seen is a campaign support, which is probably some sort of assets thing. This works well with an asset spam or like wider strategies, especially because they have a tendency to want to draw a ton of cards.
Our next card is the Mahkota Langit Grid. It is a neutral upgrade region. It costs 2 to res. It gives you 2 recurring credits, which you can spend to res assets in the root of the server and ice protecting the server. It also increases the trash cost of the asset that's in the server with it by 2. And it has a trash cost of 2. And then it's got region text on it. Let's go over to our resident non-netrunner player. Tell us about this neutral region.
An immediate use case, I hear this is Glacier, right? Like getting a bunch of ice on a server, getting it rest for 2 less every turn. I'm less convinced about assets because I feel like a lot of the assets, at least, well, it's nice to rest them for cheaper or for value of this card. I feel like the protection text on this card I'm not so convinced by that one because a lot of the assets just get out of the way either naturally or even during the runner's turn if they try to run it. Like I'm thinking of Bin Doctor, obviously, is a very common. Yeah, exactly, Castador. So this would need to be protecting something that's shaped like a clearinghouse or a Reaper function or something along those lines. And then at that point, are you like, is gonna making it cost 2 more credits really worth it? At that point, you want to really protect it, right? So they can't even access it at all. So I find it difficult to get value out of that last line of text. I'm evaluating this card pretty much exclusively on the kind of credit value it can generate for you. And I think at that point it is too slow. For already costing 2 upfront, you need to get like 3 turns out of value out of this just for it to be a whatever sure gamble for 4 corpses called.
Hedge fund.
Hedge fund, yeah. That's kind of where I'm at.
So I think that where this card shines is in allowing you to have a remote server, which is like moderately defended with like cheaper ice because it covers its own cost, and allowing you to do short value assets. Like Anthill loves this. Putting this in a remote and then having an Anthill excavation contract in the remote immediately loves this.
You're thinking more of that Asa group style, wide and shallow.
Potentially, because the thing is that this doesn't help clown car remotes because it doesn't affect upgrades, which as much as my Ampere 10 upgrade list would love this thing affecting upgrades, it not affecting upgrades is absolutely correct from a balance perspective.
Would you ever region slot this over a Tranquility, or do you just take this as a second copy of Tranquility?
No, because the thing is, so Tranquility beats this most of the time because it's 1 cheaper to res, 2 greater trash cost in itself, and the 2 credits per turn is a lot less conditional, because for these reoccurring credits to get use, you need to res assets in the root of the server, which like there's not that many assets which cost 2 or more, and clear out the server really quickly. So then you're losing out the value on this card the following turn. And it works awkwardly with the way you want to then spend those credits to res the ice, because if you spend the credits on this to res an Anthill, the following turn when the runner wants to contest that Anthill, the grid doesn't have those hosted credits yet.
Yeah, it's worth noting. Yeah, the timing is that refill hosted credits happens after your pre-turn paid ability window, before your turn begin triggers.
I think it's really interesting that I feel like I have the opposite read of this card to everyone else. Basically, in my opinion, those refilling credits are basically just so that the card is free, and then persistent increase the trash cost of 2 is what I would be running this card for. There are a few specific assets I can probably call out that I'd be shoving this onto. Obviously, Luke mentioned Clearinghouse, but I think I think Wayland goes one step further. Put this on the hostile architecture. Either they trash this for 2, taking 2 meat damage, or they trash hostile architecture for 6, taking 2 meat damage. And then they'll just never touch that card. And similarly, you could kind of do the same for maybe Wage Workers, though I agree Tranquility is probably the better card if you're in HP.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's especially with Wayland tending to be more on the Glacier side, I definitely can see some uses of this card.
My takeaway is that this is a worse Trank Grid, but Trank Grid is really good, and having a influence neutral version in a core set for all factions to potentially dip into, I think is good.
Obviously, on the non-mechanic point, I'm just going to give that obviously the art is gorgeous, but also the frame is new in that we've never actually got the chance to see a neutral upgrade before in NSG's frames. So
there are
I also want to shout out the frame, and it's really cool.
There are 3 new frames in this. The agenda frames have changed to give more view of art. The identity frames have changed, which you can see on Poétrï. And we now have our neutral upgrade frame.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Cool.
With that all said, it's time to look at another neutral card, a card that's made me order fried chicken twice because I'm susceptible to marketing. Once when I first saw the card, when the art was released on the internal NSG channels, and then again when the card showed up in an article under public release. The card is Side Hustle. It costs 2. It's a neutral resource job. When you install this resource and whenever a run begins, place 1 credit on this resource. When there are 6 or more hosted credits, take all credits from this resource, trash it, and draw a card.
I'm a big fan of the flavor text, glowing review into the 4 out of 5 stars, a classic combo.
Yep.
Yeah, this is what is the part called Penny Shaver? Yeah. This is obviously I feel like the comparisons to Penny Shaver are pretty easy to make here. This replaces itself, but it has a ceiling on it of only going +4 credits at best. In exchange, it's not your console. I think Penny Shaver is a console.
Yes.
And it's also not faction locked.
And I will say the Eternal players spent a very long time trying to figure out if there was a way they could use the or more on that 6 or more. I'm very curious to see if anything comes from that brewing. But it gives you 4 credits and a card.
Which very nice and efficient. This is just sure gamble that draws your card if you can trigger it, which pretty good deal. That being said, it is inherently delayed. Like even if you do nothing but run, it'll pay off the turn after the soonest, right? Unless you're somehow cheating out extra. I guess like you could do like wheels bounce off something because you only need to begin a run. So this seems a bit too slow, I feel like, to compete with a lot of other economy options. But if the card pool is tight enough, I can see this making lists for sure.
The biggest point of comparison for this card is a card called Daily Casts, which isn't actually rotating. So it's interesting to see that you'll have these 2 sort of staple neutral economy options. It is worth noting that Side Hustle being in core set rather than in Ashes gives it staying power in startup, but I think it'll be interesting to see how this fares against Daily Cast.
Yeah, I think this is here as a startup card.
It is
like first and foremost.
Yes.
You're probably not going to massively comment on it, but I'm pretty sure you mentioned at some point that you requested at least 1 startup card, and I would have assumed it's this.
We had 2 slots in the set, I'm willing to say, that we sort of heavily pushed for.
Yeah, and my assumptions would be they're the 2 cards revealed in the startup article. But I think this is floor econ. I think it's completely acceptable. I don't think a standard player is ever going to touch it, and that's okay. One worry I have is that there's a non-zero chance this is the only neutral runner card in the whole set, which means that we have no Earthrise Hotel. I'd quite like card draw, but I accept that it probably doesn't exist.
This draws cards.
So
one card.
If this is a replacement to Earthrise Hotel, times are grim.
This draws card. Look, Diesel is also rotating, okay? So card draw is F.
Yeah, but no, I really like this card, and I disagree with Jade in regards to whether or not standard players are going to touch it, because standard players play daily casts, and this can pop in a similar amount of time, especially in extremely run-heavy decks. I think this goes in basically every startup list. I don't think, obviously only specific standard lists uses this card, specifically criminals. In my mind, the points of comparison for this are daily casts and also bankroll, but the big thing is that this doesn't cost an MU compared to bankroll, which makes it way more usable for criminals, which is the primary thing. Also, this not caring about successful runs means that just prodding servers means that you're getting the money. It being one less to install than a daily cost and paying out in potentially a similar amount of time. This is to the turn you play it. You need to run 5 times after you install this to get the money and the card. So like if you're running like 2, maybe 3 times a turn, you're getting this money back quite quickly and the card, which makes it like 4 credits and a card is pretty comparable to 5 credits.
Yeah, no, but like, I guess my point is that some startup players were unironically running Smartware Distributor, not because it's a good card, but because it's like the best econ that they could get. To
This goes in every startup deck.
This goes in like most startup.
I mean,
yeah, but like
the startup decks that were running Smartware Distributor, it was during the period of time where the only game plan was how do you survive against BTL Charlotte at the start of the meta before we banned Pharos.
Yeah.
And when they only had 6 agendas in the whole deck.
The other nice thing about this card is, one, it's not unique and you can stack it, which means that if you install a couple of these, they pay out pretty quickly after each other. It makes your runs more valuable. Like you're basically gaining a click per run. And secondly, it's in standard, there's more ways of making this more valuable with making runs an average more valuable. Like you have wheels, which allow you to make additional runs per turn. You have Pikachu in Shaper. Criminals especially also just have like info bounty, here bans, various run events.
You can Sable run your mark.
Yeah, like this becomes running. There's more synergy stuff in standard because it's any run, not just successful runs. Like raindrops, probing remotes, like all sorts of stuff makes it really easy to pay out. And the low install cost means that not too much of like a hard commit later in the game.
It's a neutral card, but like its vibes are very criminal. Like you love having this on the table when you throw out your bravado.
Yeah, it's criminals will almost certainly in standard anyway, but it being neutral is nice as just a nice like floor econ plus some mild low level card draw for all factions to be able to grab if they want.
The next card is Flyswatter. It is a neutral ice code gate. It costs 2 to res and has 0 strength. When you res this ice during a run against this server, purge virus counters. It has 1 subroutine, end the run, and its flavor text implores you to stop that.
Yeah, shout outs to MSG beating the verbose flavor text allegations here.
Why use many word when few words do good job?
The first time I saw this card, I thought it was terrible. Then the second time I looked at it, I thought it was really toxic. So now I'm thinking it's both terrible and toxic. So just your average netrunner card, really. Like, this is just cheap gear check ice at the floor, which if your deck wants that, good for you. And then the purge virus counter text on it. So I think this is going to be very strong if it just sets back something like a fermenter in the early game, right? Like the runners put down a fermenter and runs into and then bounces off this ice, loses like 2 or 3 virus counters. That is a pretty big tempo swing. But beyond that, I feel like there's a lot of virus counters where you sometimes get to purge them is not good enough, right? Because the runner more or less fully controls when this purge goes through. I think on the more like I'm thinking of like a conduit or something. Although in the case of the conduit, you can't just put this in front of your deck and it will guaranteed go off. But there's some virus counters you really want to get rid of.
A big part of its play pattern is dealing with conduit and dealing with Physarum Entangler. Both by putting it on the server where those things are.
So the key comparison cards for this, Mavirus and Enigma. Mavirus has the other way of purging during the runner's turn in the current standard, and Enigma as the neutral call set end the run code gate. And this is kind of like it's a alternative / replacement for both. It's a straight, like, ignoring the mechanic on it, it's a 2 cost to end the run code gate. Having a code gate which says end the run is a cheap gear check. Like, it is got value in that anyway. But in the matchups where viruses matter, which almost after rotation, it's only Anax and Shapers, I think, which will be using a bunch of viruses, but criminals don't use the Entangler and Turtle is rotating. This being a influence-free alternative to Mavirus, I think is very nice. It's a tech card, but how a tech card plays outside of it being used as a tech card is important. Mavirus is a much more niche in that, but this just always being a cheap gate checker code gate is just nice.
Yeah, the obvious port of call is Enigma, which is the card rotating that's replacing.
Yeah.
This is one of the things I'd called correctly. I think there's just an end the run code gate. I think purging is a really nice and interesting one because conduit, as an example, there's a good chance that by the time someone's going to conduit you, they can break this, but you probably don't res it on the first run, therefore. You probably do it like run 2 or so, such that they're not seeing too much deeper. So there's some interesting play patterns there. I really like Purge being on an ice. It's quite interesting. I will miss the runner loses a click as an excellent punishment on Enigma, but this is probably a bit fairer.
It's the 1 credit cheaper, like it's a bit cheaper than Enigma as well. So it's better. It's also got more tech use late game because like Enigma kind of stops being as good late game when they have actual breakers down and they break it for like 2, sometimes 3. But whereas like this always breaks for 1, but like it's a gear check, it's a bit cheaper. It's 50% cheaper in fact.
I think it's
Or-
also
Yeah, I mean, you
or
when they
whatever.
can pass this and you've done it, you probably just get rid of this, to
Yeah.
be frank.
Oh, yeah. Like it having a really interesting dynamic of both the corp and the runner get a certain amount of control into when it procs makes it less just like Mavars is any paid ability window. Like that's so powerful, but this has way more limitations, which I think is good for a thing with more alternate uses and being neutral.
with that discussion done, it's time to move on to the final card that was revealed just yesterday. It is a 5-cost Operation Black Ops called Measured Response. It's 4 Wayland influence and it costs 3 to trash, making it a trashable operation. Play only if the threat level is 4 or greater, and only if the runner made a successful run during their last turn. Do 4 meat damage unless the runner pays 8 credits. This card is very prominently replacing Punitive Counterstrike, and there was a wonderful article written by Safer on its development. Those things aside, we'll pass it over to our resident non-netrunner player for some analysis.
So first thing, the card doesn't explain what the card does. What the fuck is a threat level of
Okay,
4?
this-
So that is interesting in the context of this being only available on a turn where the runner made a successful run, because that means this has a pretty narrow window of opportunity here, because it's live the turn the runner gets to 4 points.
Yep.
And then afterwards, like the game might be over the next time they get a successful run, right? Like they might flip a 3-point agenda and nice response, idiot. And just from that alone, this has a pretty narrow window to activate. And 4 meat damage obviously doesn't kill on its own, so you need either something else to go along with it or a second copy, or just straight up a second copy of this. But that's a lot of money, and the runner also needs to be poor. So I think I like this a lot less than I like End of the Line, I will say that much, but I think that is kind of the point as well. I think this card is not good, is where I land. It's obviously, it forces a response, you have to play around it, but I think it can be played around in a way where having to hold this card forever in your hand is probably not worth it for most decks.
Okay, so this creates. Main thing, Vali, I think you overlooked is that this also works if you as the corp have scored out 2 agendas and you are on 4 points, and the runner's on 0. That still works in that situation.
Sure, but decks that usually are trying to kill are usually going to struggle to be the one ahead. I feel like
this isn't a I'm going to proactively kill you. This is a you dared to mess with my stuff, perish card. This is not a combo kill thing. This is a if the runner slips up, they die.
I think it's
With
worth
similar
explaining that there's an archetype in Wayland called Modernism. And the idea
Yes.
behind Modernism, it used to be using Seesaw Scorched Earth. These days it's using Public Trail End of the Line, is to effectively be this incredibly high tempo. I am going to rush out agendas faster than you can deal with them. And if you dare to try and deal with them, you're going to be too poor to stop me from killing you. And this kind of card takes Public Trail and End of the Line, glues them together into one card, makes it cost a lot less, but then adds a load of other terms and conditions like threat 4 and it being trashable.
Yeah, this being trashable makes me even lower on the card, actually, because I feel like these killer cards often sit in your hand a long, long time. So they're very vulnerable to just getting sniped, and then the threat is gone and you're like,
Yeah,
Well, the runner did then
I also
spend 3
live on
credits
a
on this.
3 credits isn't that much though to not get shot.
Yeah.
3 credits.
So the context that it's probably worth giving. I am the group's punitive Counter-Strike player, and
Out of Jinteki, namely.
out of Jinteki traditionally. And I feel like this card is too well tuned. You know, don't get me wrong, it's a very reasonably good card, but free trash cost is rough because the first time they're seeing it, they trash it, and then congrats, you have 1 less copy. You probably needed 2 or 3 to land the kill. Second of all, 4 influence is rough for playing it outside of Jinteki like I like to. But that's obviously a very I like my niche deck kind of thing. But you know,
you just have to do tag them and mindscaping murder them instead.
Threat 4 or greater is really is actually really healthy text. What's that saying is that the corp should be running an all 2-pointers deck, which means that they can, not be one agenda away from losing if the runner's at threat 4.
Can I counterpoint you on that one a little bit? This works
Sure.
really well in conjunction with Basalt Spire for the recursion.
Yeah,
For the
Spire
ability
loves
to play
this.
it twice.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
so you can hit threat 4 on an Eminent Basalt deck. Like,
Also,
that
if
doesn't
they
need
use-
to just be 2-pointers.
Yeah, they also, if they steal the basalt, and they trash one of these earlier. Hey, look, measured responses back in my hand again. Like, this just works well with Spire. Back will stop.
There's a lot of recursion in Wayland, and I'm confident that this is a very good card in Wayland, but outside of that, I think it will see...
Oh, no, I don't think you infinite dip for this because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
I
The
think
game plan is a little bit
it's
too narrow.
interesting, given that we all played
think-
through the awful startup meta before
Oh, yeah, that
we
bullshit,
released the
yeah.
ban list, where
that was
it was just every deck you played against was a built to last 6 agenda deck that's only goal was to be clearing house or punitive counterstrike you. I think
Yeah, and
it's very interesting that the direction has gone from like these sort of hide the agenda, develop murder style of Wayland play to bringing that modernism play style into the core set.
Which I quite like. I really like this card. I'm absolutely going, just for full transparency, this is 100% going in my Empire list because it allows me to actually run the good agenda suite for, because whereas Punitive didn't quite work with a bunch of 2-pointers. I like this card a lot. It's...
When you give me my meat damage ID that I'm calling is in this set, then
They
I'll
do
maybe come
say-
back and look at this again.
The
They say
article
they
does
even
say-
admit that it exists. Like the
What do
article
you-
says, I have the quote somewhere. I put it in GLC for just to note to people of
Yeah.
the Wayland identity designed to play with the with Vendetta, which was the original design
So I've
testing
seen-
name of this card.
It recreates in a single card. It allows Wayland to force the runner to play the game pattern which Public Trail End of the Line does, which is where you have to keep a balance of above 8 credits and above 4 cards in hand, because otherwise you perish. This also ties into the Wayland's ability to throw a big sum of money to do big effect. In the case of this, if you play 2 copies of this, and if the runner has like 10 credits, but only has 3 cards in hand, 2 copies of this, then they're dead. They would have to have above 16 credits to not die to 3 copies. So spending 15, obviously that requires all 3 copies, but like just playing this for tempo, just pay 5, make them lose 8 is still pretty solid.
I will say, as
Yeah.
the team's resident punitive maths person, I'm
Oh,
so
that, yeah.
glad that this is just 8, 16, 24, no further memorization required.
Yeah.
Like, I am very much looking forward to being done with the days of having to keep the formula, run a credit total, minus link, plus 5, no, plus 9, plus, fuck, it's gone. I've already gotten rid of it. Hooray!
Hallelujah. So, yeah.
Hallelujah!
As
All
someone who
divided
has
by 2, that nonsense formula that you had to
Yeah.
memorize to
The
know how to
main-
3-on-2 punitive
So-
people.
Yeah, because the main problem with Punitive, and this is the problem with all trace cards, is that when you're doing multiple of them in quick succession with no time for game state changes between them, you have to consider all of the traces cumulatively, which is why you end up with this nightmare math situation,
why
especially with
Nobody did the maths correctly until I wrote a maths paper on it.
Whereas
4
I
months
like
ago.
the most, but whereas like crowd favorites or like a popular trace cards normally only have a single trace on them, or like hard hitting news forces a trace and then ends the corp's turn, so that the corp doesn't have to consider anything. Corp and the runner don't have to consider anything beyond that one trace, and a single trace is fine. It's when you're stacking 2 or 3 of them in quick succession, either because of the subroutines or in the case of Punitive is because you're playing multiple copies of the same card. Then you end up with the nightmare trace calculations, which make it really difficult to find the correct amount. Whereas this stacks nicely with itself in
It's 8,
terms
16,
of
24. 8, 16, 24. It's so
Yeah.
much easier. You need to
I
learn
also-
3 numbers.
I also really like how it's the same numbers as Public Chat End of the Line. Like it's the same. It means runners will still like it's pretty familiar. Like it's the same thing as the Public Chat End of the Line, where it's like keep above 8 credits so that you can pay for this. Keep above 4 cards so you don't die to it. With the caveat being that doubling 4 is 8, and there's not that many runners that can survive 8 damage.
None of you are Tempo Scorch believers, huh?
What, like just play it for tempo, like make them pay 8, make them lose 4 hands? Like, oh, absolutely. Sometimes that is the correct thing.
I do think the esoteric list is put this in GameNet. It's really funny.
Oh,
But, like,
no. Yeah.
No, I need to know what. No.
I will say, as a tempo play, I think this is slightly worse than Public Trail End of the Line, because
Yeah.
you could force the runner to pay on the Public Trail, which is 1 cheaper than the measured responses.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you
It's,
get,
yeah,
like-
but the main thing is that this is 0 influence for Wayland, whereas Public Trail is 2.
And I
So-
will say,
And it's one card. It's like a compression as well, because you're not playing like Public Child end of the line. This is one thing.
And I will say, as a BTL Modernism player, between the Public Trails, the Charlottes, and the Spin Doctors, you are like starved for influence in that deck.
Yeah.
So I personally, as a BTL Modernism player, will very much be looking forward to not having to import Public Trails.
Like,
It also
I'm confident
frees
this
up
card is
slots.
good.
Or you can just say screw it and run both and just like this absolutely burn down through their credit total via this and Public Trails, and then you just murder them. Like, I could absolutely see that being a world.
Card is good. That doesn't make me want to play it.
It fulfills the Wayland desire to shoot the runner in the face in response to them touching your stuff. It does it in a different way to Punitive, but I do prefer the decks. I think the decks that this card promotes are better.
It does shoot you for touching your
If
stuff, as
it
long as the
costs
stuff
4 with
is
a
not
trash cost of
prevented
4, I would
responsible.
play this card and it'd be funny because it's just the card with all the 4s on it. I'm going to run hand and trash this before you get to use it, and you're going to be sad about it.
The thing is, if you run hand and miss it, you've spent money running hand and made a successful run.
You never miss. You always touch the right cardboard.
It's the turn that you score up to 4 that I'm worried about this, Luke. So successful run anyway.
So do you wanna know what the Wayland sickos have cooked?
No.
Score Azef on top of a Malapart Data Vault, pushing the threat level to 4, and then immediately play this for a 6 damage combo turn and tutor it from your deck with the Malapart. That's what the Wayland sickos I've seen in GLC. That's what's been cooked.
I'm confident there's a deck that involves this. I just don't
that
play
combo,
it, which is the difference between
that
this and
requires some
Punitive.
never advanced support, because you can't just advance, score the Azef.
So-
and if
so-
you then contest the Azef, they don't have the murder because they're tutoring it.
So it's you have Hollow Man Azef in the server. First click Hollow Man. Second click Advance Azef. Fire Azef. Trash a card that lets you tutor Malapart because you're ob.
The answer is
Fire
Hollow Man.
Malapart to grab Measured Response, and then
you
last click Measured Response.
How many credits is that? That's
Lots.
4 for the. Oh yeah. This is the thing. You can contest the remote, contest HQ, and it will cost the corp a ton of
Yeah,
money.
but you're ob. You haven't paid for 80% of the cards you've played. You can afford
The other thing is that you can just be above 8 credits and you're fine.
Look,
as the runner.
Yeah, there's
Like
the terms and conditions for this card not firing. I was trying not to laugh as I was reading it. It's only if the threat level is 4 or greater, and the runner made a successful run last turn, and they don't pay 8 credits, and they haven't touched it and paid 3 credits. It is just a laundry list of ways to not die to.
Well, yeah. Thing is, from a design perspective, I think it's from a pure power level perspective. Yes, it's not as good, but as a card that can single-handedly win the corp of the game earlier than anticipated, I think having multiple ways for the runner to be able to mitigate this, I think, is nice.
Especially in an impless world where manipulation is your current tech for it.
Having a trash cost like 3, maybe a bit higher. I think because you're spending money on this, and this either eats the runner's credits. If the runner trashes this from hand, then it's you spent a card to make them lose 3 credits and not see another card. That's not terrible, and this is basically a must trash as well if they see it in hand. So they might spend money they don't necessarily want to. Plus recursion stuff from in Wayland with Spire. I think that this card is going to see a ton of play because it has the word "do meat damage" on it, and we love meat damage.
Well, that's all of the currently previewed cards currently out. We'll be back again whenever there's another pile of previewed cards for us to talk about, hopefully in a week or so, given that preview season is supposed to formally start on Wednesday. Does anyone feel like it hasn't already started? I'm very curious to see what makes Wednesday not an entirely arbitrary start date.
I said the words, okay, I have a couple weeks before I start implementing cards onto Cataloger, and then I spent 4 days in a row pushing a new card every day.
So we've seen 11 cards so far.
It's been on average 1 a day since they announced that preview season would be on the 9th.
We've seen 11 cards, which if consider we have probably the last card in the set. Yeah, that's we have 82, which means that we basically have seen slightly somewhere between 1/8 and 1/7 of the cards, which considering there's only what
it's interesting
3
specifically
weeks?
I know it's because some of them in the decks, but we've seen so much of Wayland already.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. What we've seen.
There are specifically, if you include the fact that we know that 14 for the Century, we have 5 Wayland cards left, assuming 11 for each faction. 2 of which are IDs, and 2 of which are probably agendas.
There's also whatever card lets you install agendas face up, which presumably is going to be a green card.
It's presumably an agenda.
It's
There's a
presumably
type of agendas that go face up.
Yeah,
Valley.
it's presumably a type of agenda which would put the word public on it, which would be
It does say a way to install
yeah.
agendas face up rather than
I will-
a public agenda.
I will have strong words to whoever wrote that preview then, because I feel like it very heavily implies it is not an agenda that just installs itself face up.
It's like it's a Wayland upgrade which you can when you install agendas in the root they go face up, and then there's some benefit for something or other. It turns every agenda into an Oaktown renovation. Something. I don't know.
Exactly.
Something.
Yeah, but if you call the two, like if you call two limit one-ofs as two IDs and you assume there's at least one, maybe two agendas, that leaves what, one asset between Anthill and the number 14?
Sets have had weird numbers of certain card types before. Like this is not like whatever.
It is a core set.
It is a core set though, so like
It's
that
a
would
core
be
set, and or have I mentioned that every single number of a card we've seen so far has been a type I got right, because my guess of 11 for each has looked incredibly
Your original
accurate.
guess didn't believe consoles existed though, so
It didn't, but like I also just said there are like 3 or 4 blank programs and just forgot hardware is real, because System Update 21 forgot hardware is real. So, you know, in my defense.
yeah.
all right. Thank you, everyone that's listened so far. If you've made it this far in the video, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You've been listening to Key Performance Indicators, and we have been rigging up. Thank you very much for watching.
I can't believe we
/
actually named this
listening.
after 2 cards.